Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, the platform where inspirational leaders from the tech, digital and business world share their insights, experiences and learnings. I'm your host, Sandra Patel, and I'm thrilled to bring you conversations with some of the brightest minds and most passionate leaders in the industry from across the world. Whether it's about navigating challenges, driving innovation, or building diverse and inclusive teams, this podcast is all about learning from the very best. Each episode is an opportunity to hear real stories of success, personal growth, and how our guests are giving back to the community. And it's also a chance for me to learn right alongside you. So get ready to be inspired, motivated, and equipped with the knowledge to take your leadership journey to the next level. Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So today we have our lovely guest with us today all the way from Berlin. And we have Rux Dariescu with us today, who is the founder of Coaching Reimagined. And in this episode today, we are going to dive deep into the critical role of quality interactions within business settings. Rux is an experienced coach and an expert in leadership development. She shares her journey today with us in leadership development, shares her journey around insights on how meaningful and effective communication can transform organisational success. And we're also going to, which I'm really looking forward to, is explore the definition of quality interaction, discuss the impact of remote and hybrid work environments, and uncover some actionable steps that leaders can take to enhance the way that they communicate and collaborate with their teams. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting out, this conversation will offer you some valuable takeaways around culture of high quality, embedding culture within high quality interactions that drive business results. So hi, Rux, how are you? Really lovely to have you on the podcast today.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure, actually, to speaking with you. And I appreciate your invitation.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to speak with you again as well, and really enjoyed our initial conversation. So I'm really looking forward to today. So I think let's, if you're happy to, let's get straight into it. So I think initially it'd be really great to just set a little bit of, context and scene. Obviously, I know I've done a very quick introduction, but if you could just start by telling us a little bit about your background and how you became, how you got to where you are today, how you became a coach, and then we can move on to a bit more context.
Sure. So background-wise, I'm a biochemist scientist, and I worked in business and technology throughout my career. So I'm a converted
the best
scientist.
Industry to be in.
And I felt that's important to mention because as a biochemist, that's where I kind of trained myself to think systemically.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm looking at the business environment, that's a system made of many systems that interacts with many other systems. So that actually has been a big element in my career and how it shaped itself. Although I have to admit, almost 30 years ago when I started, I didn't really have a career direction.
Who does? There's not many of us that have had a
did
clear.
But that would actually help me throughout time to deal with uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I didn't have a fixed plan. I had an idea, but I didn't have a fixed plan. It helped me move with where the world is moving. So rather than defending the past, I was a big adventurer in the future. And I was very fortunate to have been in this industry of technology and software and systems when it started to become popular.
Mm-hmm.
Because many pioneering companies have been my employers over time, and I'm saying many. I didn't stay put in one place because I have always been drawn by the desire to learn more and discover what I can take from where I am, bring into where I want to go, and what new can I learn from the other places. So I spend my careers learning about multiple industries, and my idea was that I should build a career around the customer. So looking at roles that are touching the customer from any dimension. I started in product, and I launched the first email mobile service of Romania Vodafone division. Which was the most fascinating experience. And I learned about the internet by associating a telecom network to the nervous system, and that the moment I figured out that a telecom network is nothing more than a system that has switches and sends signals, to
Mm-hmm.
me that was the world. And then I was in telecom, in financial services, in energy trading, um, geophysics, and construction. So I went into different domains for the purpose of learning about how customers are first of all, how the customers are feeling in that industry, and what can I
Mm-hmm.
do to make something better for them. And the roles, I started in product, then I moved into marketing, client management, service delivery, business development. I haven't done HR and
You've
finance.
done everything else. Which is
But
great to get that variety, particularly in your line of work. I think that's obviously stood you in great stead for taking off your career within coaching. So that's fantastic.
yeah, I because I needed that diversity to
Yeah.
understand how systems work, how different they are from one place to another. Yeah, and how do you connect with the end customer in the end? Because without the customer, you don't have a business. And that was a kind of that's how my career got built. I was quite good at my job over time, and I worked with fantastic people who recognized something in me and pushed me harder in many places, sometimes harder than I could take. But
Mhm.
it helped me develop into the person I am today. I know pain, I know gain, and
Yeah.
it really helps when you look from a leadership perspective. How it helps to understand uh, circumstances, environments, people, and interactions.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And that nicely brings me on to my next question. So obviously we were keen to talk today about business, people's interactions within a business setting, within a business context. So it'd be interesting initially to understand from an experienced coach like yourself, how would you define a quality interaction in a business setting?
That's probably one of the most important things to consider. Um, for quality interactions, you have to have a common purpose.
Hmm.
You have interactions without a purpose as well, but they don't necessarily take you anywhere
Yeah,
or anywhere good or anywhere
I can
productive
imagine. Yeah.
or anywhere performant. Yeah. So when you have a common purpose, it's probably the most important aspect that you can use to drive quality interactions in any business. Now, that purpose is made of a sum of many smaller purposes of each individual that takes part in the interaction.
Hmm.
Yeah? So you have a business purpose, but me as an employee, as a leader, I come in with my own purpose. So if our purposes are not in sync most of the time, it's impossible to have it all the time. But most
Yeah.
of the time, yeah, the interactions will be reflecting that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have an objective that
Yeah.
you, as an individual or as a business, but if you don't have a purpose, the quality of the interactions will be highly visible and impacting on all your business results across the board.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess what you're saying is that the people together need to have the same purpose, be aligned and on the same page. Okay, fantastic. And actually think it'd be probably quite useful if you could share an example of a high quality interaction, one that has led to significant business results.
Yes, I have quite a few examples from my career. I'm thinking that probably the one that I'm going to use today is one that set me up on this path of seeing the value of the quality of people interactions connected to the value of business, and
Okay.
has driven myself into this domain of coaching to help people to see things in a different way, to just change their view of one thing that will change the world for them. I'm gonna take you back a few years. I was working with a team of software developers, a fairly large team, and we were doing custom software where the customer was already unhappy with our work because, when you calculate the project, you have time, you have budget, you have resources, and you distribute them, calculate the plan, promise the plan, and that's it, you do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now the world doesn't really work quite like that, because you may have the best plan ever with the best people ever, but if they don't interact well on the plan, then your plan gets out of shape. Either
Mm-hmm.
you need more capacity, you need more budget, you need more time, and the quality of the work is not that great either. So I invited this team, who was already under a lot of pressure, to play a game, and we called the game Accord. So are we in
Right.
accord with each other or not? And I'm gonna step back a little more to tell you a different story that connects, and then we'll finish this one. What prompted me to look at people interactions was a specific meeting I have in mind and is there all the time. Was a product team meeting with all the other functions that are touching the product in delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to agree 3 items on a roadmap. And it was an impossible conversation, which turned into a huge argument between people and started blames everywhere because I told you I can't do this, I told you you should do this, and all these are things that are normal in business when you disagree. But
Mm-hmm.
that conversation was so pressurized. I think if we were having the windows closed, they will explode. It was such an intense time.
Yeah.
And at some point,
Quite a heated discussion.
very, very. At some point, I said, okay, life can be better than this. It doesn't have to be this way. But we had to let the conversation go. I was agreeing with another leader in the room, and I started drawing in my notebook for whatever reason. I don't know. I started drawing flowers. And I dedicated one flower to each one of the participants, quite a few. And I'm a visual person, so I always have coloring things in my, with me, like crayons and stuff. And I started drawing petals of the flowers in different colors. And in my mind, I associated a darker color with a negative attitude in a meeting, and the lighter color to a positive one. And that was my perspective of what was going on in the meeting. So by the end of the meeting, I had a bunch of flowers, more or less colorful. And my perspective was something was positive, something was negative in the meeting. Reflecting on that, I started thinking, how can I make all the flowers look nice? Yeah, how can I make a bouquet that will make sense to everyone? And that would be my perspective only. So I recognized in that moment that the interactions in the room were my perspective. I went and asked around each one of the participants for their perspective of the interaction. And surprisingly to me, we had opposing perceptions of the same interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? But we needed a common decision, and someone had to lose, someone had to win part of that decision process. But the interaction itself was a trigger for me to say it has to be more than this into the game. How can I understand this better? And now, going back in time to the team that was under pressure to deliver, I told them the story of the flowers and that I mathematically created a model by which, if we are looking at kind of scoring our perception every day when we interact, we can deduct from that if we are gonna deliver or not the project.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, yeah, right, sure. Another thing for management to do, another thing for management to track us on and punish us. I said, no, this is our game. Just give me a chance for 5 days, just 1 week. And as a software team, we worked with stand-up meetings every day, and that was the ideal time to score ourselves and to do it publicly. So it wasn't a hidden score. It was like we will broadcast it in the meeting. The first couple of days were a bit shaky, but on the third day, I forgot to ask people to give me the scores because behind the scenes, I would calculate a deliverability for our project. Were we able to deliver? And on the third day, I forgot. And I've been called out like, hey, Rux, what about the scores today? I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
They're actually asking you for them.
And then we rolled out the entire project. We ran 3 months every day doing our scores, and we had ups and downs on our scores, being able to deliver. But it did help the team come together because when someone was scoring themselves low, the others will ask, how can we help? And that changed the entire team dynamic. It changed the business results for what we delivered. The customer never believed we could deliver on time, on scope, on budget, and on quality.
Fantastic. And
Yeah.
without any further disagreements by the sounds of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, we did have debates, but they were not
Yeah.
blaming
I
or
think
judging.
healthy debates,
Mhm.
that's to be expected, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
even some heated discussions, but it's fantastic. So it sounds like you've put a real measure and metrics in place to be able to measure the quality of those interactions and the success, which is fantastic. And I'm sure if anyone's interested, that they can contact you for more examples. Sounds like you've got quite a lot of examples
Sure.
to give, which is fantastic. So I think it'd be interesting to then kind of move on to what do you see from based on your experience and obviously your different interactions with clients, customers. What are the common signs that that you see that where a business needs to improve the quality of its interactions? Like, how would a business know that they need to improve their interactions?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question, because if you think of business leaders and you look at their calendars, you
I'm just
don't
thinking
find
about mine when you just
you don't find much space in there.
yeah.
So, when I work with leaders, I always invite them to consider blocking time for thinking. And they said, no, my time is for action. And I said, how do you act? If you didn't think about what you act on, you just act, and that's it. So the first indicator to me is the number of meetings in taking place and how many people are part of those meetings. Do you have like visitors to a museum type of participants, or they are active participants? Do they join for information, for sharing information, for gathering information? Do they join for bringing something in or not? and how many of those are taking place. Going back to the example with the team under delivery pressure, they had an incredible amount of meetings in their calendars. And they always complain, like, I'm interrupted, I can't think a logical process with all these interruptions. And I said, why do you go to the meeting? Because I'm invited. And from a leadership perspective, that has to be a huge consideration. In what areas do you want to pull your people in? Yeah, why would you bring everyone? And how do you differentiate between cooperation and collaboration? Yeah?
Interesting.
We are using this interchangeably, but they are not interchangeable. Yeah? Cooperation is, for example, working together towards a common goal. We agree, and each one of us goes its separate way to work on it. Collaboration is when we come together to a solution and we work together for it. Now, think about a business with many roles, and to avoid duplication of work or duplication of roles for one single activity, you have to have very clear in mind collaboration versus cooperation, because that drives how information flows and that drives how interactions are taking place.
Yeah. Good point. It's given a couple of things for us to, as leaders, to think about there, which is interesting. Fantastic. And what you touched on this earlier, actually, around negative behaviours within leadership interactions. What are some of the behaviours that you feel can negatively impact the quality of interactions?
These are so many things that could be interpreted as negative. Yeah, it could be a very personal perspective of what's negative. Like, for example, direct communication can be interpreted as negative. But
What you mean, someone being quite direct and
quite direct,
abrupt,
but
sort
factual.
almost.
Yeah, not abusive or judgmental. Factual. We
Yeah.
have our brains interpret in so many ways what we hear. So
And each individual, like, as well, takes that differently as well, don't they? Because obviously everyone's different. Everyone works differently. Yeah.
So the most important aspect is actually communication. I would not go into any other traits of leadership, but communication. You have to think about how your message is received. You have to think not first step only, but the second step of your communication, because following your communication, action will take place, and the results will be a reflection of your communication as it was. Regardless of how each individual perceives the communication, they perceive it from their specific experience.
Yeah.
So the wider the communication community you address, the more experiences you have, so the more interpretation you'll have. Therefore, you have to use simpler communication to not create more disturbance in the business or to generate disturbance in the business. At the same time, communication words, the words we hear are always associated with an emotion we feel. And there is no science yet that proves to us that the way I feel love is the way you feel love. It's something we feel, we can express it in words, but we really don't know if it's the same feeling. It's the same word.
Yeah.
So to not hang up on the negatives, the most important thing that generates the quality of people interactions is actually the communication process.
Yeah.
Communicate with purpose, communicate with reason, communicate with meaning, and choose the words carefully because they have different resonance to different people.
And I think on that note as well, actually, like communication, I've seen, and it moves me nicely onto my next question. There's been a lot of debate around this over the last few years, well, since
Mm,
COVID, really, but more so in the last year or so. And I've seen quite a few businesses trying to make that shift towards more, on-site
mm,
working, is the whole shift around remote and hybrid work environments and how that's affecting the quality of interactions.
yeah.
And I assume that a lot of that will come down to communication again, but it'd be interested to understand your take on that.
Yeah, it is about communication, but it's also communication doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in an environment.
Hmm.
Yeah. So hybrid, remote, or in office, these are environments. The more constraints you put on an environment, the less it will develop. It's in biological systems, the larger the ecosystem, the more variety you have. The smaller the ecosystem, the more restriction you have in your evolution.
Yeah.
So it depends how leaders want to look at these systems and what dimensions of it they are interpreting. Because when we observe the world, we do not see its granularity. We look at the big picture, but we
Hmm.
do not see its granularity. So we've many variables, part of this granularity. Fluctuations are missed. Therefore, we start believing that the world is certain. So certainly you can do better work if you are in the office. Also, you can apply the same to you can do better work if you work remote or hybrid. But the environment you create to facilitate the information flow, because what's a business about? It's taking information from one end, transforming it, and sending it out to the other end as value that people pay money on. Yeah? So the thing that you are creating, it's your environment. And you can put barriers on to hinder evolution, or you can lift barriers to facilitate evolution.
Yeah.
And that's a choice that it will drive people's decisions. I have been working remotely, not full-time remotely, but I started working remotely in 2000. Yeah? And
Mhm.
it never hindered my progress, because one thing I understood is that the degree of freedom I get has to be compensated with the degree of responsibility I bring. Now, to me, from a hybrid and remote point of view, it's not about the interactions. It's about how do you help people become responsible if they are not already. What means do you bring in a business to help people understand the responsibility they have? Because it's not just listed in the terms and conditions and you should do this and that, or in your job description, which, by the way, you've signed it. By the time you start work, is changing because the world is changing. Yeah. So these things have to be part of the same conversation. I'm personally, I'm a big advocate of freedom of from all directions, but freedom with responsibility. Yeah? If we don't trust the people to become responsible, you can have them in the office 24/7 and you still don't get the work done.
Yeah, agreed. I've seen that happen before.
Yeah. Well,
um,
from my career, almost 30 years, I only had 1 year where I was fully in the office. No remote work was allowed.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
but the
mean, to be
rest,
honest, I so much prefer being in the office and around my colleagues. I've had years of working in the office and I much prefer it. Although, having said that, more recently, I've been doing more from home, and it is nice, and I am getting used to it. A little bit too used to it. Um, Fantastic. So, I think it'd be great if you could share some actionables that people can take from this, because I like with the podcast to provide some takeaways for our
mhm,
listeners. So steps that businesses can take today to start
mhm.
improving the quality. of their interactions? Have you got three like kind of really quick kind of actionables that people can start working on now?
Yeah, I think that the first one people have to acknowledge is actually the quality of interactions impacts the quality of the business they run. If that's not acknowledged, there is nothing you can do really. You go on the same cycles. So if the moment you acknowledge that, and not in the in terms of politics, quality of interactions is purposeful. It has a meaning. Yeah? So acknowledge that the quality of interactions is a major impact in how the business is run.
Yeah.
So that's the
So
first
that's
thing.
one.
I guess a second one would be to start differentiating between collaboration and cooperation, because trying to pull everybody in an activity may not be the best way forward, but that means you have to build trust between people.
Yeah.
Right? I would think on a third one to this list will be learn to deal with uncertainty. We live in a world that is changing every day. It's not, change used to be, it will take years for a market to change. It will take
Yeah,
a
yeah, I
long time.
agree.
And now it's every day. And with the adoption of AI and the directions AI will evolve into, because it's inevitable, that brings a lot of uncertainty. So what models do you have to guide your thinking to deal with uncertainty, be in business, stay in business, and grow in business? That's another type of interaction that has to be on the agenda.
Yeah. That's really valuable, really insightful. Yeah, thank you for those three. I'm sure you can expand and help and guide businesses through this, but it is great to share some kind of an initial steps and points where people can start improving, leaders can start improving their interactions. So I think final question would be to learn and understand what your final thoughts or key takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with regarding the particular subject around quality interactions, enabling them to receive and achieve business results. Is there anything else that you'd like to add there?
There is one thought that I would like to leave your audience with, which is,
Okay.
achieving what we want is much simpler than we make it. Is if we learn to see things in new ways, we make things simpler for us. We tend to complicate life a lot. But if we learn to separate noise from reality, and the reality we see it's a personal perception there, is not a universal reality, it's the reality we see. The whole purpose in leadership is to make it simpler. Complicated, anyone can make it complicated. Simpler, not everyone can make it simpler. So achieving what we want can be simpler if we want to see things in new ways.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. And I've been feeling like that quite a lot lately, actually. But I always think, I don't know, I find with those things it's easier said than done. But I guess that's where you come in, because quite often there's a need for someone to be able to work with you throughout that journey. So yeah.
It's not a long journey, because as a coach,
No.
my purpose is to exit coaching, not to stay engaged forever. And it is a journey where if there are few prompters for each individual to look at one aspect in a different way, and then they apply the same model to everything else. Is not changing. This change is not a scary one.
Yeah.
It's just the moment you click with one point that you can do it differently, everything else changes around you.
Interesting. Fantastic, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that. Really enjoyed that. And there's really some really valuable insights there, some key takeaways from our leaders and listeners in the audience. So thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. If anyone wants to reach out to you directly, I assume LinkedIn's probably the
Yes,
best.
sure. LinkedIn, or write to me directly at hello@coaching-reimagine.com. LinkedIn, you'll find me as Rux Dariescu.
Fantastic, brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care. No problems. Thank you. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Leadership podcast. I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I did. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing their experiences and wisdom. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It really helps us reach out to more leaders like you. If you're interested in joining me on the podcast or have someone in mind who you think would be a great fit, feel free to reach out and get in touch, as I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember, leadership is all about learning, growing, and giving back. Take care, and I'll see you on the next episode.